Let's see. Do you see welcome?
I do.
Nice. Yeah, I guess how much time do you think we should give it? Maybe 5 minutes or less, or?
Yeah, we'll give it a couple minutes.
And at least
Sorry, now your audio got
right
choppy.
here so far.
I don't know.
Yeah. I think I'd leave your video off, Dan.
Great.
What?
For what it's worth, your weekday events go fine during the lunch.
That's perfect. Well, I have like a Amazon package that is supposed to be here soon with some cable. So I was planning on hardwiring up to the attic from our router.
Closing
a bunch of stuff.
I didn't get to see the rest of the Zoom panel and participants while I have Keynote up. That's a little bit strange, but
Yeah, I was looking to see if they gave you the little like whatever that icon is. I don't see it.
Keynote live.
If you want, you can kill that for now because we probably got to go over a little bit of just make sure no one's a jerk. Make sure if you have a jerk, you know how to report them kind of conversations. All the fun things that the internet provides. So just a heads up to everybody, we'll probably circle back around to this, but we are recording this session. So just a heads up to everyone about that. Especially you, Dale, since you'll be sharing screen and stuff like that. If you run into anything that's a little bit weird, you can let us know and we can try and chop it out too. If something happens or whatever, just let us know.
Yeah, it should be good. Cool. Notifications are off. Yeah.
Cool. How many people are RSVP'd?
47.
27. Cool. Sweet. Well, welcome everybody so far into the group. Dan, you can do this if you want. Your audio was coming through okay.
Yeah. Hi. Is it still coming through okay?
Yeah. Yep.
Yeah, now I'm all mixed up. John was on a roll there.
You're good. So Dan
yeah, sorry, I'm having some internet.
Yeah, Dan put this together and then his internet had issues. So I'm going to steal all the credit tonight. Dan and I are the co-organizers of the Cleveland React group. Welcome. If you haven't attended before, welcome for sure, but let us know how you heard about it. We always like to hear those kind of things and stuff. Dale's going to be our speaker tonight. Just a little bit of some housekeeping items. I kind of mentioned it a little bit earlier. So we plan on recording the talk. So if you have to bounce out or something, hopefully we can give that to you to kind of reference later, or maybe if you just wanted to kind of touch up on the content. But what that means is that everybody's audio, and if you share screen or anything like that, I think Dale's going to be the only one that does that, but that'll all be in the recording. So if there ever is a point in time where you're like, oop, wish I wouldn't have shown that, say something and we'll try and make a note of like the time so we can try and cut that stuff out. It is the internet and a lot of people are in this room. So we think you're all humans that are nice, but if just as a heads up, we do have a code of conduct. We can give you a link to it if you're interested, but don't be a jerk. Don't say anything stupid. Don't be dumb at all. If somebody is a jerk or dumb or stupid or does any of that or anything else you can think of, Dan Ott, myself, John Knapp, just let us know and we can take care of that. So in Zoom itself, there is a chat feature. There's a little chat window. It will send a message to everyone by default. There's a little drop down, so you would just change that to somebody else's name. If you're a part of the Cleveland Tech Slack, we have you can message Dan and myself there as well. I'll at least keep that open, Dan, just in case yours isn't. I don't want to speak for you. But just be good internet citizens and kind to each other, and don't do anything creepy or weird. There's not a whole lot going on these days, but does anybody have any interesting news or things that would be cool to share, or maybe another upcoming like remote event? One of the positive things about this is it kind of allows access to maybe some groups and areas that we wouldn't physically attend before, but maybe we can kind of piggyback off of their cool content. Oh, and Dan has just let me know that we have an email address as well. hello@clereact.dev. And that'll send an email to Dan and myself as well. So anything during the event, let us know. Anything post the event you want to let us know. We really want to make sure that everybody feels comfortable in these kind of events and in our group and stuff like that. So cool. Dan, anything else?
Yeah, I don't think so. I hope this is coming through okay. We have a Twitter account, Cleveland React, so go ahead and follow that. I am starting to put together a survey, so I'll send out probably next week. So if you see that, please fill it out because it helps learn about what everybody wants to, get out of our meetup. Make use of the tools that Zoom allows us, the nonverbal stuff. We will keep an eye on, if you use the raise hand, and Dale will go through some of this stuff and how it's going to operate too. But we will help Dale. John and I are going to help Dale keep an eye on if people have the nonverbal reactions or in the chat. So ask questions there. Otherwise, yeah, I guess that's all I have as far as news goes, right? Yeah, Dale teaches. Oh, go ahead, John.
Oh no, you're good. You're fine. You're good. I was just gonna say, if you don't know what the Cleveland Tech Slack is for any reason, just let us know and we can send you a link to sign up if you're interested.
Yeah, that information is also on the meetup home page for our meetup. Anything else? I'm all mixed up because of these internet problems, so excuse my little space brain. But yeah, I think if everybody is good, we're gonna get started here. Just as a quick intro, Dale teaches extreme programming using React and JavaScript and Java and Node to developers at Fortune 100 companies all over the USA, the UK, and China. After the classroom training is over, Dale acts as a player coach and embeds with the team in code and shipping features to production. He's also working on a startup called rebrokerlist.com to help real estate agents find employers that can take their career to the next level. I just personally like to say we very much appreciate Dale helping us out here. I'm excited about how this goes. So without any other further rambling from me, take it over, Dale.
All right, thank you for that introduction. Thank you everyone for joining. It's a real pleasure to have you here. This is going to be my first online workshop like this. So most of the classes I teach are in person, usually 30 students at a time. So it's going to be a learning experience for me as well. I like to have a really interactive course or workshop. So I encourage you to ask questions, interrupt, dialogue, whatever works for you. Make it the best for you while we're here together. So I'm going to do a little bit of a slide presentation to tell you a little bit about how this is going to go. I guess I need to share first. Bear with me. You're going to be writing, hopefully you're going to be writing some code here today. So welcome. A little bit about what we're going to do in the first few minutes here. We're going to agree on norms and expectations about how this is going to go. Then we're going to create a resume application with React, something very simple. And then if we have time at the end, we'll get to know each other, maybe a little bit more of a social event. Normally, I would like to do that in the beginning, but I figured we'll just get into some coding right here and see how it goes. So that's that. Me, a little bit about me, other than what Dan said. I've been programming for a little while. If you're familiar with Pearson VUE, they do medical licensure exams and lots of things like that. Doctors, nurses, medical examiners, I can't remember what. They all have to take a test at Pearson VUE to prove that they know what to do. Scott Gillette and I together built those testing systems. It's now the world's largest testing, computer-based testing system. So it's a pretty cool company. If you ever get a chance to work there, it's worth it. I love to travel. And like I said, this is my first online workshop, so that'll be fun. We're gonna have a little contest here quick. How old is this picture? You can put a comment in the chat about what year you think that might have been taken. All right, so moving on. There we go. So our objectives or the outcome we're looking for from this workshop is that by the end of this, you'll be able to effectively create and deploy a React app. Really any React app. This happens to be a resume app, but you should be able to create and deploy pretty much anything at this point by the end of this. We're going to be using Create React App. We're going to deploy to Netlify, which is a really hard word for me to say. Talk a little bit about branches in Git and how to merge those and things like that. So if you haven't worked with Git, we'll try to work you through that as well. And I do assessments during my workshop. So I'm going to do things that are called check for understanding. I'm going to cold call, meaning I'm going to call on you and ask you, I'm going to ask a question. I'll usually pause for a second or two, and then I'll pick somebody that I'm going to call on. So if you don't want to be called on, that's fine. Some people don't. Just when I call on you, just say pass. That's fine. Cool. Any questions about this so far? I guess post it. Can't see the chat window. I'm going to move on. Let me know if you have any questions about this. All right. So a little bit, take a moment to read through both of these categories here and figure out which side of the mindset you're on. So now this is where I get to call on somebody. Let me come back here, find my chat window, which somehow is different now. Huh. That's crazy. I used to be able to see the participants, but I can't. So I'm gonna get lucky here and we'll say, who is this? Oh, I don't get to see any names. All right, I'm gonna backup plan. Is Ramsey here? No. Linda, Linz B? Can I unmute you? Can I can't hear you.
I'm here.
All right.
Good job.
Cool. I'm
You
like,
got one.
I finally got one. It's like, this is great. And of course, I'm assuming everybody can see me fumbling around here. Ah, there we go. That's better. Lynn, so where are you at? Are you fixed mindset or growth mindset?
I'm a growth mindset person, and my first reaction is usually to say some of the fixed mindset stuff to myself, but I've noticed that in my work, I always expect like myself and everyone else to be in growth mindset. So a little bit of both, but I prefer to live in the growth mindset category.
It's very insightful. So your internal dialogue is about fixed mindset, but maybe externally and expectations of other people is growth. Nice.
Yeah.
Anybody else want to share? Let's see. How do I see a name? This is super weird.
Yeah, I had to I think close something else and then like one of the sub windows, and then I could get the participants to show as a list again.
Yeah, that's
I don't know. Best of luck. I can send you a screenshot of the participant list if you want.
I actually usually if I want to just be able to see the names, but I can't.
Do you want us to just all say something in the group chat and then you'll have a list of participants?
Well, I can't even, yeah, we'll get through it here. Participants. Oh, there we go. There it is right there. I can see it. Aha! It's right here. Nice call. All right, so let's look at, I don't know, who do we want to, I want to be kind of random. Ed, where are you at? Are you fixed or growth? Give me a second. You're muted at the moment. Ed's gonna ghost me. All right. I don't want to accidentally unmute somebody. Mark? All right, let's open floor it. Anybody want to?
Yeah, I think you got.
You want to go for it, Mark? Yeah, go for it.
Yeah, I would say growth. The growth, absolutely. But on the work times, or if I can't figure out what I'm doing, it was to fix pretty quickly. So I would say majority of time growth, always working on growth. But you know, if I'm having that day, or it's coding, right? Things change continually. I love that. I heard this thing a couple of weeks ago about software development. It works, or it broke. I don't know what I did, or it worked. I don't know what I did. You know, it's the same exact thing. So, you know, when I'm having a big issue with something, I get right into that fixed mindset, you know, pretty quickly. Like I just give up. I can't do this. And I'll go for a walk and I'll come back and be like, what was I thinking? You know? So luckily far and few between, but when it's bad.
Yeah, it's interesting that you mentioned the walk, by the way. It's probably one of the more effective ways to reset your mind and think about a different way to approach a problem. So that's a really good technique. It's one that we use very rarely, though, so that's kind of interesting. Anybody want to volunteer and admit they're in the fixed mindset? No? All right. Well, I'm going to throw my wife under the bus. She's very much in the fixed mindset. And it's an interesting observation, you know, for her to, when we first started dating, where I'm very much in the growth mindset. And one of the examples that, you know, about fixing things, right? I'm kind of mechanically inclined, and I travel a lot for work, and sometimes I'm not here and things break, and she would have to try to figure it out. And one time, our smoke alarm battery went dead. And there's 5 or 6 of them in the house, and finding which one it is that is chirping, you know, every 30 minutes or something is kind of a challenge. But, you know, we talked through it, and she was really proud of herself. She was, you know, kind of switched and said, I'm just going to be persistent and work through this. And you know, eventually found it and changed it all by herself. So it was great. Okay. So what we want to be in this session is we want to try to focus our time and energy and effort as much as we can on the growth mindset. Things that we want to do to fail here is a good chance to do that here, because there's no consequences, right? Nobody's going to know, and nobody's looking for the work to be done. Cool. So a little bit about the way that I go about doing things. Again, you might get the sense I try to be really interactive. I'm going to cold call on you. I'm going to call on you. So be ready for that. We might do some code sharing if you want. We might do a little bit of voting. So I might ask a question like, what do you think I should do here? Should I rename this variable? You know, vote, you know, yes or no. And we have the little voting buttons down here on the participants window. I don't know if you can see that. You can vote yes or no right here. We might do something fist to 5 that requires a little bit of video. Probably won't do that. So these are the teaching practices. So I'm going to call on you, but I'm not calling you out, right? It's all about respect, psychological safety, and vulnerability, and the learning mindset. So those are the things that support the teaching practices, right? We have the culture here that supports that. So that's kind of what we're going for. Baby steps. So everything we do is going to be really small little baby steps. We're going to write maybe a few lines of code, and then we're going to push it to production, and we're going to test it and see how it goes, right? We're going to write very little code, and we're going to deploy it to production. And we're going to go in very small increments. And the idea here is that, you know, kind of like laying bricks, right? You don't build a brick house 40 bricks at a time, right? You put one brick down, you make sure it's flat and level and square before you add on to it. And that's kind of the way we're going to build our code here. We're going to do small little baby steps, think about it, and see how it's going, and then we'll do a little bit more. One of the things I've observed, especially in myself and other people as we're getting started in coding, is that we try to do things that are really big. Trying to do things that are really big make us, it's kind of like a little intimidating. So we want to do things small because they're really easy. They're not intimidating. The other thing we're going to do, for the most part, now I'm going to violate this a couple of times tonight, just in the sense of being faster and in brevity. I know where this thing is going. But for the most part tonight, we're going to do the simplest thing that could possibly work. We're not going to get fancy about anything at all. We're just going to get it to work. And once it's working, we could improve it. That's the idea. But if it ain't working, there's no point in trying to design it and make it fancier. So yeah, now baby steps and doing the simplest thing that could possibly work is a workflow that can help you teach yourself any technology. What I mean by that is I'm a self-taught programmer. I never went to college. I took a course or two, and other than that, I taught myself all the programming. And now I travel around the world teaching, you know, hundreds, I don't know if thousands yet, but at least hundreds of people in large corporations how to write software better. And the primary technique that we use is baby steps, and the simplest thing that could possibly work. These are XP principles. So if you're not familiar with extreme programming, it's probably worth looking into. At least I think so. All right, moving right along. Expectations. You guys talked a little bit about the code of conduct. Same kind of thing here. Everyone will respect the person speaking. We want you to be vulnerable, ask questions, make mistakes, let us know, you know, let me know specifically if you need anything, if you need me to talk louder, bigger text, can't see it, whatever. We have these go slower, go faster buttons that you can use here to say whether I'm going too fast or too slow. But I also use enough, let's move on. And we can abbreviate that to Elmo, right? Enough, let's move on. We just say Elmo. And I guess we could abbreviate way too fast in the same way. So give you a sense, you can either put in the chat Elmo or WTF and we'll know what to do. We only have 20 participants. We've got 47 RSVPs. So I was going to use a tool to help me call on people, but since we've only got 21, I'll just use the chat window here. All right, so we're going to get out of presentation mode here real quick. What we're building is a single page resume application. It's going to have multiple sections. It's going to be one page, scroll up and down, that's it. There's going to be a navigation bar, home, a couple of other sections. We'll style them accordingly. The home and footer areas will have social media links, and we'll have a contact form the visitors can use to fill out, get some more information. Now, to build this, we don't need React. We could build this just as effectively in static HTML. So why are we going to use React? Well, I had to come up with an excuse, so we're going to make it all data driven. We have a JSON file. It's going to store all the data here. and it's going to drive all the content in the page. So that's the idea. Any questions about that? Give me a moment. Raise your hand. Oh, there's also, if I can make this bigger, a way to raise your hand in here too. I think it's this one. Nope. Maybe
Yeah,
I
the
don't.
raising thing doesn't show up for hosts.
Yeah.
That's-
Yeah. Just
anyway, it's there. Yeah, it's there. Use that for yourself. Okay. At the end, I'm going to ask you to, in the comments of the meetup group, to post a link to your GitHub repository that you created for this and your Netlify app, just so that people can see what you created. You can learn from the way other people did things, and you'll also have a neat way to like connect with other people who've been here. Okay, that's all I got on this. We're gonna run this command now from the terminal. And before I do that, I guess, is everybody all set? You want to write code along with me? If you need me to hold on before I move on or anything like that, I'll try to ask, is it okay if I move on? But if you need me to hold up or anything, let me know. Go faster otherwise. I will also be sharing some code directly because there's some chunks that are just a little bit too big to have you do on your own. So I'll send those out in the chat. So let's get rid of that. And this, go away. Okay, so just to give you a visual, this is the one that I created earlier and deployed to Netlify. So this is kind of where we're going today. You'll have social media links, you'll be able to put your name in there. It'll all be data driven. A little bit about me, be able to download your resume, put your work experience, etc. It's kind of what it looks like. Obviously, if you don't like the styling, you can change the styling any way you want. Feel free to make this your own. There's my GitHub. Okay, we don't need that. So, switching to a terminal here. That's the command I'm going to run. So it's npx. npx allows you to, anytime you see npm install -g and then some app, it's doing a global install. Well, npx allows you to kind of temporarily install it, run it, and then it doesn't stay installed in your machine. And I kind of like that because I always end up with the right version. And I think, change this here. There we go. Okay, so let's see what we get. Everybody running this right now? Or maybe not everybody, but those of you who want to. Now, David, is it okay if I call you out? David? Is it okay if I call you out?
Yeah, sure.
David and I worked together in Northern Ireland a few years ago. He is in Germany. This looks like this might have hung. He's in Germany right now. It's like 1 o'clock in the morning for him. But he's also got tons of React experience, so he's gonna critique me. Uh-oh, it did. Let's see. So that failed for me, and I cleaned my cache, and that sometimes seems to help. I've had a little bit of problem with npx on my machine lately. We're off to a great start. This is such a weird window. I'm just going to explore here while I'm waiting for that. I'm going to see if I can get that window and my terminal. Can't. Uh-oh. I might have to install this globally. So we can split this up here. Is this big enough for everybody to read? All right, let me kill this and see if I can install it globally. Ah, that's why. Sorry. Okay. Let's try that again. So for those of you who are wondering what I just did, I'm switched from node 12 to 14 to see if that would solve the problem. It does not look like it is. And it's generating everything, it's just the install is failing. Yep. Let's try one more time. Is anybody else having, raise your hand or unmute or something if you're also having this problem? Hoping I'm the only one.
It worked okay for me.
Okay, good, thanks. Yeah, it's something on my, machine. Let's get this installed and then we'll see if we can do it the local install way. See if that'll. Okay, create React app. So the real difference between having it globally installed versus running it with NPX is obviously globally installed. I can run it as a, I don't need the NPX in front of it. And it looks like this is going to work this time. So we've got 21 people on. Can you, in the chat window, or maybe what's a good way for us to determine who here knows React already and is just looking for a little bit more versus who here is the first time looking at React? So maybe let's put a comment in the chat. It's hung again. Yep. I have not had problems with installing stuff until just yesterday. Newbie, new people. Ian. All right, Ian, let me know if I do anything wrong. Mark, okay. might not be able to get this installed all of a sudden. That's going to be fantastic.
Dale, I'm working on I'm just going to zip up an install that I have, give you all the dependencies and stuff like that.
Are you on, okay.
I mean,
Actually, I've got one that's already mostly done here. Let me just go in there. I'm good with that. Let's go to this. And okay. Okay. Cool. So moving right along here, I'm just going to switch to an earlier. I've got a Git repository here with some earlier stuff in there. Actually, I wonder if I'll just take it at this point. Yeah, good enough. So first, we'll go through a couple of things. Let's look at the package.json that's in here. So node-based projects like React, these kind of are running on Node. That's what we're using. They have, Node has a set of scripts that are defined in the package.json. So we've got start, build, test, and eject. For the most part, you don't need to worry about what eject does right now. But start, we'll start our project, build, we'll build it, and strangely enough, test will also test it. So the way we can find out, NPM's got a pretty neat way of figuring out what scripts are available. You can just run npm run. And it'll show you what lifecycle hooks. These are built in. Lifecycle hooks are built into Node, and they'll tell you what you can do. And then there's available via npm run script. Most people just call this npm run. npm run is a shortcut for npm run script, but that gives you build and eject. So if we run, I'm just going to install here. Hopefully. Yeah, looks like that worked. If we run npm start, it'll go ahead and start the project in the development server and then open the page for us. And if you've done this on your computer, you should see something very similar to what I see when this finally loads. Just a plain old React project. Okay. So what I want to do here is I'm going to exit this. Bear with me for a moment. I just want to make some, make a copy of this folder so that where am I at? Cleveland React somewhere. There we go. Obviously, I don't want the Git directory. I'm just going to create a copy of this so that I can leave that Git history unchanged. Oh, that's not what I wanted to do. Okay, cool. Yeah, it's got a copy over all the node modules, but give that a second. Is there anybody, Knight Rider? Oh, I love Knight Rider. Yeah, the TV show, have you seen it? All right, so while this is copying over, The next thing we're going to do is wipe out we'll do a little bit of a tour of the project, and I'm going to use IntelliJ IDEA. This is not a Git repository, so let me do that first. I'm going to use IntelliJ IDEA as my editor. I think most people use Visual Studio Code, but I've been using IDEA for so long that I've kind of stuck with it. So I'm going to give you a little tour of what this project looks like right now. And if I did it right, it should be, yep. Okay. So like any other web project, index.html is really the kind of the starting point. And bear with me while I flip through my notes. Okay. So index.html is really the starting point, and React apps are just like that. This is where everything starts, and you can see in here that there's these public URL tokens. These get replaced at build time with the actual URL to where that project is installed. And also in here, scripts are injected to load the React component. So that's index.html. This is where you might change the title, for example. So let's do that right now. In here, we've got React app as a title, but that's not the title of the app that we're creating. So we're going to call it Dale's Resume. And I would look for some, okay. Yeah, let me know if if I'm doing anything that you guys aren't keeping track of. I'm used to a little bit more feedback and a little bit more interaction here. So used to looking out at the class and seeing who's following me. I can't do that. So index.html, we've changed the title. And you'll notice here there's this div called root. It's got an ID of root. An ID means something in HTML. It's really the, if I hover over it, yeah. It's a global attribute, it's a unique identifier for that element. If we go look at here at index.js, which is not in the public folder, you can see that it gets that root element and attaches it to the React DOM renderer. So that's how this whole thing works, right? Here's our app element that's imported here. So let's go look at app. And this is where where everything starts. And since we don't need any of this, we're just going to drop it. Delete everything inside of app. Okay. So that kind of stops all of our functionality, but we want to create a resume here. So let's go ahead and start. Anybody, do I have the chat window? Here we go. Amy, well, let's target somebody who knows who knows a little bit about React. Is that Lewis? Lewis, what should we do first here? What do you suggest? Put you on the spot.
I'm still installing my.
Okay. All right. Anybody want to help him out?
I haven't got my NPM installed to work.
You have not got your NPM installed to work?
That's right.
Still installing. Okay. Anybody else still installing? Do we need more time on that? Erica, what do you think we could do here? Remember, we're going to build something that's going to look.
Well, I guess
Go ahead.
Yeah, I was just gonna say, like, I would take a look at like your finished site and kind of modeling this off of to break in the components that we might want to build in React.
Yeah, that's great. Okay. So thinking about baby steps, what might we do first? Any suggestion? There's no wrong answer here.
I don't know if you're still asking.
Sorry, you cut out just a little bit there.
Oh, I was just gonna say, maybe just starting with the header, and like building out the HTML for that part, since unless you
sounds
plan on using React, like data-driven.
Well, we are going to work there data driven eventually, but I like your idea of just building out the header part here. So if you look at something like this, I'm not going to go into the HTML, whatever we decide to write here is going to be fine. We've got a nav bar, we got a little bit of a header here, and when we click on the nav bar, it brings us to the various points. So let's start with home, and maybe, you know, tell them who I am. So let's start there. Simplest way we could do that is hard coding. I'm Dale Lotz, right? And I believe that I left, did I leave this running? I didn't. It's still loading. That's the previous iteration that was running. Waiting for localhost. There we go. All right. Hey, we've got at least the first part. And so that's kind of the way we're going to go about this. We're just going to work on it little by little. So this isn't very interesting at this point, but let's think about it a little bit. So I can add to this. I probably want to not have this stuck over here in the, to the right, to the left side. I want to maybe put it in the center. So we're going to use a little bit of styling for that eventually. But I think for right now, we'll think about a little bit what Erica said, which is there's going to be different components. So let's think about what's responsible. Right now, I'm defining this right in app. An app is kind of the overarching thing. You know, it owns, it kind of represents the whole React application. So in this case, maybe it shouldn't just be rendering that H1, right? You can imagine over time that if we put the whole page here, you know, we could put the whole page here in app, but it would be one giant file, right? And giant things are not really baby steps and not really small and not really working habits. So let's start out by, we'll just use these headers up here. We'll have a home component and about, a resume, etc. So let's start out with that. I'm going to create a new file here. And I'm going to put it in a directory called home. And I'm going to call it home.js. And I'm also going to add a file in here called home. Well, I won't style it yet, but I will eventually. So when we create a new, create a new React component, I've got a little bit of a shortcut. Maybe, there we go, keyboard. For creating a stateless component, just kind of plugs it all in for me here. So here's our home component. So if I just leave this in here, I move my H1 out of the app and I say, I'm Dale Lotz. Okay, that's really what the home component needs to do. So let's get that in to the app. So rather than rendering H1 I'm Dale Lotz here, I'm going to render home. I don't need to give it any, split this here so you can see both of them. I don't need to give it any parameters yet. Okay. Everybody see that okay? Is that big enough? Hopefully big enough. So you can see here, now I've split the responsibility for that whole upper area. Let's call it this area is the home area. That's now the responsibility of this component. And app is really there to like put everything together. It's the overarching responsibility of it. All right. So let's make sure this works. Looks like it does. And if we come in here, I've got a little tool installed. Oh, I don't have it enabled for extension or for incognito mode. So let me just create a new window here. We've got the React tool here installed. So if I come down here and look at the components, you can see I've got app and home both defined. And I think that's enough. I think we should deploy this now, right? Good enough for now. So what I'm going to do is make sure that I have that idea. Oops. Okay. I'm going to commit all of that to my Git repository. I'm assuming that you know how to do that, but if you don't, that's all right. We'll work through it. There's two commands from the terminal. Can you see this? You run git add dot. Well, first, git status should show you what files you're going to check in. Then git add dot, which will stage them for commit. Then git commit -m, and you might do a message like add home component. Okay. Let's check in with everybody now. You put a comment in the chat about where you're at. Anybody waiting? Start with an, ooh, that was a good suggestion, by the way. I don't know how to say your name. App.js right there. Okay. Linda, yep, or Linz. So I want everybody to get to this point where you have, it's working on your local, obviously don't say your Dell lots. Have it so it's working on your local machine when you run it, and you have committed these changes to your Git repository. Yeah, we're gonna be short, but that's okay. Thanks, Dan. Dev tools, very cool for Chrome. Okay, Amy's caught up. Home is not defined. Okay, so Linz, or you might be missing this import statement. I'm just going to give everybody a few minutes to catch up before we move on. Where is the, there it is. Maybe raise your hand if you need more time. And then unraise your hand when you're ready to go. That'll kind of help me gauge when to move on. All right. Is everybody? What we're going to do now is we're going to go create a GitHub repository to push our changes to, and I see. We're going to go push our changes to a GitHub repository. So is everybody ready to do that? All right, I'm going to take that as a yes. Okay. So in GitHub, in your GitHub page, go to repositories and click the new button. And I'm going to call this React Resume. And okay. Now, what's important here is that we do not initialize the repository with a README or a license file. Okay. Right now, we've got commits in our local Git repository, and if you're not familiar, Git is implemented using a directed acyclic graph, meaning each subsequent commit or each commit points to, except for the first one, of course, points to one to two parents. And in this case, we can't have two first commits, so we don't want to have a commit on the on our remote repository. And it gives us instructions right here to push to an existing command line or a repository from the command line. We can just copy these. Come back over here to our terminal, paste those in. And if we come back to GitHub and refresh, we should see our code. So is everybody, I can put those out in chat or whatever, but at this point, you're going to want to make sure you have your GitHub repository created, because the next step is to deploy it, and it will deploy it from that GitHub repository. Where is the chat window? There it is. Don't forget your Git ignores. Excellent advice, Ed. So I had, I don't know if you saw that, I had a Git ignore there. I'm gonna say comment with ready in the chat window when you're ready to move on. Ooh. I'm just gonna count them as soon as I get 19. Oh, we lost a couple people. Obviously, if you're just observing and not going along and you're ready to go, you can comment ready there also. For those of you who are ready, I'm going to go through this again, but go to Netlify. I need to go to app.netlify.com, and you should be able to log in there with your GitHub account. Should bring you to something like this. So we got all right, a couple more people. We'll wait for you to get ready. My wife is watching The Sopranos upstairs. There's an argument going on, so it's pretty. I'm not in the mafia. It's just a video. There is no mafia. It's not even a real thing. All right, a couple more minutes. If you go to for those of you who are ready and want to move on, app.netlify.com is where we're going to go next. Create a new app from there, and you'll be able to connect it to your GitHub repository. So new site from Git. We'll wait for a few more people to catch up. I'm going to go ahead and do that. So we're waiting for a few more people. Those of you who are ready, go ahead and click the GitHub connection. It'll give you a list of your available repositories. Oops, that's not what I want. Oh, that's why. Cool. I have no idea what React Workshop is. Oh, that's a different thing. Okay. You do not have to be on the paid plan, Mark. You do not have to be on the paid plan of Netlify for multiple sites. Oh, Dan already answered that. Yeah, it's so to give you guys a little background. I used Netlify, I think 3 or 4 maybe years ago, maybe 5. I don't remember exactly when I first discovered it. And I looked at it, thought it was interesting, and then kind of forgot about it for a long time. And then Dan, as Dan and I were talking about doing this particular session, he suggested that I look at Netlify. I really hadn't thought about it. And I kind of glanced at it and wasn't sure what I thought. And the more I've worked with it, you know, I've done a couple of things with it, and I really like some things about it. And so One of the things I did is immediately moved one of my websites over to it so I can get a little bit more experience with it. And yeah, it's pretty cool. One of the things that I really like about it is you can have a form that a user fills out and submits data, and it's all part of the free plan. I haven't used the CLI, but I did read about it. So Michelle says that's pretty great. I like it. Yeah, easy to use. Yeah, it looked like the commands were pretty straightforward. I didn't know how many people were command line comfortable here, so. All right. I guess comment deployed then when you have successfully deployed your site. Once you've done that, I'm going to go ahead and walk back through this again, this whole process from the beginning so that people who are not ready. Okay, so in app.netlify.com, I'm saying new site from Git. I say GitHub. You might have to configure GitHub on, you might have to configure Netlify's access to your GitHub account, which I have done. So now I can search for React. It should show me React resume. There we go. I'm going to select that. I'm going to deploy master, and it kind of inspected already what's there. It really knows what's to run automatically. So npm run build. That build command puts all the files into the build directory. And so this is the folder that we want Netlify to publish. And there's really no advanced settings that we need to set here. And then you just click deploy site. So yeah, you just ask. We in the build command and the publish directory, that's what you want to put. If it didn't detect anything, usually it does a good job of detecting what your project has in it. So if it didn't, I'm not sure why. And again, once you have deployed that, please type deployed in the chat window. And if you're just observing, you can just type deployed. That way we don't wait for you. David. Ooh, Lynn's. Let's see what's going on there. Deployed. Lynn's, what does it say? Deploy failed? You can unmute and chat quick.
Yeah, deploy failed, production master at head. We couldn't deploy your site.
What's your GitHub username?
I'll type it.
Ah, okay.
It's hard to understand the B's and D's.
Understood. Phonetic alphabet.
Yeah.
That would be Lima, Alpha, Bravo, Uniform. My wife has taught me that, or forced me to say that U is unicorn, but that's not right. It's uniform.
Unicorn better.
Yeah, I would imagine. Interesting.
These are the details from Netlify.
Also, I do know what I'm doing. I swear. See if this can actually work. Almost everybody deployed. Yeah, typically, it won't run locally on another machine if for some reason, there's something missing. We'll try to figure it out quick. All right, so I'm going to go ahead while we're waiting for that to install Netlify. I'm going to go ahead.
All right, it's a casing. The home file home.js is lowercase, and then in the app.js it's asking for uppercase. I'm pretty sure that's what it is.
Oh, is that? Let's go look here. You're saying here in app.
Thank you. I fixed that on my code and I didn't redeploy it or re-upload it to GitHub. Thank you.
Yep. You must be on a Windows machine. Imagine that has cool. Good call. Thanks, Dan. All right. Let's see if mine deployed. Site deploy in progress. All right. Once that's done, we'll just kind of keep cycling through here where we will make changes, commit them. We're going to go ahead and work in master. I'm going to kind of skip over the branching side of life for the purposes of this rest of this session. There we go. So we're deployed. So the idea is, we could have spent more time building out more features and looking at it on our local machine. But if the deployment doesn't work for some reason, if we can't get it in the hands of the customer, then we've got a real problem, right? And so there's really no point in building much of anything. I'm Dan. There's really no point in building much of anything unless you can actually get it in the hands of customers, right? So the first thing we want to do very, very early is make sure that we get it in the hands of some external user, right? That's who we're building it for, so let's get it out there. So that's the idea behind doing that so early. All right, so let's work through a little bit more about what we're going to do. I'm going to have to turn on the light because my ambient light is no longer there. All right. So we want to style this a little bit, I would imagine. And the way we're going to style is with Bootstrap. So I'm just going to work in my terminal right here. Hopefully you can see that. So I'm going to do npm I. Well, show you a little hint here too. Oh, I hate this one. I'm going to put it. React add. Now all my machines on. Add Bootstrap. No, this is for React Bootstrap. And actually I don't know, has anybody, Dan or John, have you ever used React Bootstrap?
I have used it recently.
You have, David? And how did it go?
Yeah, I'm not convinced yet. So I use it for about 4 weeks, and quite often I wish I could just write plain diffs and class names.
Yeah, that's kind of the way that, I don't know. I mean, we'll see. That's kind of the way I felt. So what we're going to do is npm install Bootstrap. And what is the other thing I need? Sorry, I'm looking through my notes here. What I'm going to bet that I did not. Oh, there we go. We're also going to install Node Sass because I like writing SCSS. and not CSS so much. So you have to spell install correctly, it turns out. So install Bootstrap and Node Sass. Everybody have that? And what we're going to do is we're going to do a little bit of, we're just going to set the application up now so that it can be styled with Bootstrap and that everything is working with SCSS rather than CSS. And there's a few steps to this, so you might want to write them down so you can repeat them earlier. Or I looked for a command line switch to say to use SCS from the beginning or SCSS from the beginning. I couldn't find one, so maybe there is. So the first thing we're going to do is go through, and there's two SCSS. Sorry, there are two CSS files, and we're going to rename them to SCSS. Just change the extension. I don't think we probably have to do that, but I'm going to do this all the way around. Just change them to SCSS. And then we're going to go into index.scss, and we're going to cheat. We're going to copy this line right here, which I can put in the chat if you want. How about we do that? All right, I'm never going to understand Zoom, and it's completely illogical windowing. So that's the command that I'm putting right here at the top of my SCSS file. So that brings in Bootstrap. So this basically brings in all the styling that we can do with Bootstrap. And you'll notice there's a bunch of stuff in app here. We don't need any of this in here right now. So let's just get rid of that. And we'll start styling our home component now. Well, first thing we're going to do is, of course, make sure it still works. And it does. It looks the same, but it still works. Ooh, or it doesn't. Oh, I made a mistake. In app.js, and I think that's the only one. Oh, no, also in index.js, you have to change the imports. Let's see if that fixed it. Missing binding. So couldn't find Node Sass? There. Oh, I see. It's on the wrong version of Node. I bet this window is using Node 12. Yep. Okay. Now we should be good. There we go. Okay. Everybody working? So let's go through and review those changes again. We install Node Sass and Bootstrap. We rename the CSS files to SCSS. And then in app.js, we fix the import. And in index.js, we fix the import. And then in index.scss, we import Bootstrap. Cool. So what does that do for us? Well, let's look at our home component. Let's say in here we added a class name, just did it nothing but, there we go. We just added a class name of container onto our home.js. And you'll notice that my name now is going to shift from where it's at into here. And really that's all just bootstraps, borders, and styling. And as we switch around, you'll see to various mobile platforms, it kind of deals with it accordingly. So that border becomes smaller on smaller devices, larger on larger devices. And then if I get out of mobile, there we go. Okay, so that's what container does. Oftentimes in Bootstrap, we're going to keep things as a container. If we go look at our example, it's pretty clear this is a container, right? The home thing is a container. So let's leave that class name on there. And let's give it rounded. And text center. So now what it's going to do, you won't see it, but that's where these little rounded corners come from. That's what rounded. And center is going to move my name from where it was into the center. Cool. So that's where I'm at right now. Now what we want to do is make this all be data driven. So I don't really want my name to be here. What I want to do is pass that into the component. So let's start, we're going to start at the top level and then work our way in. So we'll have a name attribute here. Oops. And I'm just going to hard code my name, Dale Lotz. I'll do it like Dale Lotz. All right. And then in here, now a lot of times you see things like props, and you pass in the props and you do props.name. I prefer syntax like this. So I destructure props coming in, and then I capture the name property from the object being passed in. And now I can use that same variable here. So let's split screen this between app and home. You see how I'm passing in my name into this container, and so now I should see that update here. Yay. So I'm gonna leave this up for a few minutes. Everybody should get to here, so post in the comments ready when you are ready, or in the chat, I should say. Getting a SAS error, invalid CSS after body. Invalid CSS after body. Is it list a file name by chance on your error GS-Volt? Expected selector at rule was, okay. Index.scss, line 3 of index.css. Let me pull that up quick. So it's likely this, wait, line 3 of index, I did that, index.scss. Do you have a semicolon here? Maybe. I think it might be, did I paste in the semicolon? I did. CSS is valid SCSS, so I'm surprised that that's having an issue. Oh, all right, that was it. All right, I'm gonna go back here to the code. Feel free to copy. I'll get rid of index, okay. In the chat, go ahead and post if you're ready. Close some of these windows. I do not understand Zoom in any way, shape, or form. I mean, I've been using Zoom for a long time, but I've never had to like switch around from various windows, and they're windowing like, why is this here and this one on this desktop? I don't know. I gotta go take a Zoom class. Okay, once you're ready, if you want, for those of you who are still working on this, keep working on it, we'll wait for you. If you are ready and want to keep moving on, what we're going to do next is we're going to create a file in the public directory called data.json. In the data.json file, it's going to be an object, a JSON object, that will have a property called home. The home property will be an object also that has a name property. Sounds a little complicated. We're doing that for future. I'm over engineering, you know, not the simplest thing possible. Told you we would violate that a couple of times. That's one of them. So in the data.json file, we're going to have home. Home's going to have another object in it called property, called name. That's where your name is going to come from. You want to use the fetch method to try to fetch method in a couple of React hooks to try to load that file, that data.json file. So you can go ahead and work ahead if you like. We have about a half hour left, so we're not going to get as far as I had hoped, but that's all right. Since this is all working, I'm just going to go ahead in my terminal.
Dale, we had a quick question about the data file.
Yeah.
In the chat. Where are you putting the data.json file?
In the public directory. So it goes right here in the public directory. So I just committed my changes. We'll put our data.json file here, and it's really going to look like this. I will go ahead and put that in the chat window. Oh, sorry. And sorry, going back to the code. Mm. Oh, I can close this. We're waiting for a few more. But don't worry, I'll make this, obviously this repository is public, so we'll be able to look at it afterwards. So let's go back here while we're waiting for a few people. Somebody who's ready. So how about Mitch? You able to chat or answer a question? So Mitch, where do you think we should be loading the data.json file from? What component should be responsible for loading that? There's Mitch. Mitch Webster. All right, Mitch isn't talking to me. Casey?
Hey, Dale, he was talking in the chat.
Oh, I'm sorry. Home component. Okay, I got to scroll down apparently. All right, Mitch. Home component. Anybody else have a differing opinion, or does everybody agree? Comment if you agree if you agree, and maybe what other component, if any, you think of. And you could also say, I don't know. We got app. Index.js. There's always one in every group. That's David. And use fetch. Ooh, I don't know about that. Mark, about the data.js component. All right. Now we got a pretty strong argument for app. Does anybody want to talk about why they say app? More foundational. Sure, yeah, broader, more, it's kind of the highest level, right? And we could imagine that other components might need access to this data. Home is being used within app, so if you load it there, I'm assuming within app, you can grab the value for name and pass it into home. Yeah, one could imagine that as we work our way through the page, that there might be multiple components that need access to the data. And since app's responsibility is all about, figuring out what's going to be on the page and maybe passing in data, then that seems like a good place. So yeah, like it. So let's go ahead and do that in app. We're going to need a couple of things now. Hooks are the common nomenclature for what we're going to use here, and they're really just a couple of functions that handle state and other things in React. And let's call it I don't know, resume data. So we'll have we're going to use this function called useState, and useState returns an array of the actual state object. We'll call it resume data, and then something that you would use to mutate that, and we'll call it set state in this example. We could call it set resume data or whatever. What name we use here should be informative for the code. And then we're going to say we're going to call this use state callback, and you can see that the import happened up here automatically for me. And we'll give it an initial state of an empty object. Okay. Now, let's look here. There's a function called fetch that's built in that lets you request information from, it kind of like does any AJAX call or asynchronous call. So how do we know where this is coming from? Well, this is coming from the public directory, but when we're installed, with a React app, you could install it in a subdirectory. It could be installed at the root of the server. It doesn't really know. So that's where there's this special environment variable we can use called public URL. So let's make use of that. Process, oops, sorry. So this is a tick mark here, not a single quote. It's next to the one on my keyboard. And it's that little tick mark. And you'll know you got it right if your IDE kind of highlights it like this. Dot. Like that. Public URL. So this first bit of code here is to set up the hook for accessing and mutating the state for this component. And this second one here is for, it's a fetch, and fetch returns a promise. I'm not going to go into promises right now, but you know it's a promise if it has a .then method on the end of it all the time. So .then, so we're going to get the data.json file. That will give us a response back. And we need to do something with that response, because that response is, it's a whole HTTP response. It has status, it has a whole bunch of other things with it. And we don't really want that. What we really want is just the JSON from the body. So here we can do response.json. And you can think of promises as a chain of things that happen, a chain of processing events. So this is going to pull the data from data.json and return this whole HTTP response. So this returns an HTTP response. The next then gets that HTTP response and calls the JSON method. Even though it's not here, it's an implied return. So the next then now has a JSON object. And it should be exactly the data that we're expecting. And I'm going to do something, my personal style is I like to pass in functions. So since what we would do is just pass set state to it, we can just use set state as the function as the function that we pass into them. It's called a higher order function. And then anytime we're dealing with a chain, promise chain, we want to have a catch just in case something goes wrong so that it doesn't happen silently. Now, I know some of you who know React well are looking at me and going, you're forgetting something very important, Dale. Something super important. This thing is not going to work well. So who can tell me, what am I forgetting? I know Dan and John, David know. Erica, what do you think? If I run this
I was gonna
code,
say, this is a guess, but I would say the file where to pull, like the JSON file, like the source of where the data is coming from.
okay, no, I think that's pretty good. What I'm thinking is something a little bit more fundamental in that if we think about the way this code is going to run, right, at runtime and the way React behaves. So what React does is with this whole state situation is when it notices that the DOM is going to change or that the state is going to change from a known state, you know, from a previous state to a known one, it's going to re-render it. And so if we think about the way this works, app's going to get instantiated. It's going to call this, right? This fetch is going to happen asynchronously. So eventually it's going to run, but this return statement is guaranteed to run or guaranteed to complete before this fetch. So what's going to happen is it's going to render this to the DOM. It's going to do this fetch. Fetch is going to call set state. React is going to go like, oh, this thing's got a state change. It's probably going to need to re-render. It's going to re-render it. It'll call app again. It'll call fetch again. See what I'm saying? It's going to peg your page and it'll peg your CPU if we run it this way. And that's because that fetch is going to run over and over and over and over and over again because it's going to get called every time this app function is called. And what we want to do is stop it from doing that. We only want it to, how many times do we want it to run? Might be able to hear your laptop fans. Yes, exactly. Yeah, if you ran it this way, it is pegging. Just close your window, and we have to figure out how to get it to only run once. We want this to run once and only once because once it retrieves the data, that data is never going to change. This is really static data. Nobody's going to mutate it later, so we don't really have to worry about it. So what we do is we wrap that in use effect. So I'm pointing this out to you because you will probably do this one day. You will write some code, you'll put a fetch in there, and then you'll wonder why your computer is so slow. And this is why. So use effect takes two parameters. The effect, you know, this is the function that should run when I'm not going to explain this well, but when it needs to run. And so what we can do here is give it a second set of parameters, which are its list of dependencies. And here I'm saying it's an empty array. There are no dependencies, which means it's only going to run once. So we can test this now by, rather than calling my name, I pass in resume data.home.name. Now this is going to be, it's not going to work either. I'll give you a hint, but maybe you can tell me why. So what I'm trying to do is show you some of the common problems you're going to have as you work through React apps. So this isn't going to work. Anybody have any ideas why? Who haven't we called on? Jessica, what do you think? Why won't this work? I kind of gave you a hint the first time when I was talking about this fetch.
Can you hear me?
Yep. Yep, I can hear you.
Okay. So I'm getting a name undefined error. I'm not sure if that's expected or not. Let me look back at the code.
You're probably going to see something like can't read property name of undefined.
Yeah.
Yeah. So that is a JavaScript error. Whenever you see that error, I'll give you a hint. Whenever you see can't read property blah of undefined, it means that the thing to the left of that property is undefined. So if it says can't read property or can't read property name of undefined, if we look at our code, what does that tell us?
That it can't find home, or yeah, it probably can't find home.
Yeah, it means home is undefined. Okay, so I did this way on purpose to kind of inject this bug. So we've got an issue, is that you remember I said that this return statement is guaranteed, because of the way JavaScript works, is guaranteed to complete that return statement before this use effect or this fetch or anything happens. My initial state in my component is an empty array, or an empty object, sorry, right? So resume data is an empty object. It tries to retrieve the home property of resume data. The home property is undefined. And it tries to read name of undefined. Of course, that's just never going to work. Okay? Does that make sense to everybody? The first time this calls through, it's going to, the first time that we return and this little block of code executes, home is undefined. So what we can do, we can wrap this in a little conditional. And we can say resume data dot home. Let's just say, as long as home is defined, and this if statement here with JavaScript will return true if home has something. And it will, wait, what did I do? Oh, I did this wrong, sorry. All right, it's got to go around the return. So if resume data.home, if I knew how to type, I would be super happy. All right, my return statement goes in there. That's what I'm going to return. If home is there, but let's say that if it's not there, I'm just going to duplicate a little extra code. I'm just going to do this for the moment. I'm going to pass in a name of unknown. Ooh, jeez. There we go. How's that? So you see what happens? The first time this is going to run through, it's going to return home with a name unknown. And eventually in the future, sometime in the future, we don't know when, the fetch will return, the use effect will happen, home will be defined, and then React will detect the state change. It will call this function again, and if the if statement will now be true, and it'll return my name. So let's see if I'm right. It's compiling, it's running. We should see a flash of unknown, maybe. What are you doing? Maybe I did it wrong. Well, looks right. Oh, it might be running on the old, yeah, it looks like my CPU fan is pegged. I think it ran the old code before I had a chance to kill it. There we go, die. Die, window, die. All right, let's go over here. Did you see that little momentary flash of unknown? still got my. Cannot kill that window. Die, window, die. All right, we'll wait for it. Okay, so very cool. Now we understand how this is working, but I don't know about you. I don't particularly like seeing a little flash of unknown. That doesn't make me happy as a user anyway. So let's do something about that. So before I do anything about that, well, I'm gonna go ahead and do it. You can keep coding if you haven't got this yet. I'm gonna return, I'm gonna do a little bootstrap magic. We want text center and padding of maximum padding here that it'll allow us. So we want a little div here, and we're going to put a spinner there. That's what I'm up to. And in order to do that, we just do spinner border and roll, because we want to make sure that we are, I didn't do a good job of this, but for the most part, we want to make sure that we're screen reader and accessibility compliant. Makes it really nice for people who need it. A little span in here. And this is for the screen reader. It tells the screen reader that it's loading. So now rather than rendering unknown, we just render this little spin here. And if we need it in more places, we could move that off into a component and reuse it, but I don't think we're going to need that right now. So let's see if that changes my behavior. Well, if I reload, I don't see anything because there's a little bit of a caching thing going on. So I'm going to do new incognito window, and you'll see that that momentarily shows up there, see? But it wasn't very big. So I want to make it a little bigger. And don't worry, I will post all this stuff up so you can see it shortly. Let's call it 6em. So I'm just adding a little bit of style here to app.scss to make that spinner bigger. And let's see what happens now. There we go. That's a little better. All right, let me switch back here and go ahead and catch up to that point and post ready in the chat window when you're ready. And we are 5 minutes out of time. So I think we're gonna also end shortly after this. How many people we got left? 17, the last one. If you're not opposed to the spread operator, you can always do home to always render the one that will still flash a blank screen. Yes, exactly. I'm not there's a debate about, Ian, there's a little bit of a debate about the spread operator. I tend to like, especially if you're using TypeScript, it's kind of handy to use the actual property names themselves. And yes, it would, but you're right, it would completely eliminate that null pointer dereference there. But I like the loader. I don't know. What can I say? The Linder bans it? Oh, I don't know. I don't know if I agree. I don't know how I feel about that. I think I would allow it. I use it for lots of things, and I see it a lot in React code. So, okay, well, I'll display this code again. I'd like to take the last few minutes, so when you're all ready, have it checked in and deployed. I'd like to take the last few minutes and just chat a little bit about how this first time went. And I'll also post a link. I'll do that right now. It is this. So survey. I would like you to, if you would be so kind as to provide some feedback by completing that survey. And then I will also, I was going to post it in the meetup group, but I won't, I guess.
I think Dan trimmed down the attendee list, so we might be able to send it to
yeah,
a shorter list of people who actually showed up in the room at some point.
Right on. That'd be good. This is the survey. That's what it looks like. I will also. Oh, I see. Yeah, that makes sense. Ooh, where did you hear about this event? I get to do. Or we got. Oh, okay.
Yeah, I was just trying out the polling thing. So
That's pretty cool.
just a quick little Zoom poll. I don't know.
Yeah, this is super interesting for me. Yeah, trying to figure out how to run these remote workshops. It's kind of interesting. But don't worry, I had about 13 more pages of notes that we could that we could go through. But everybody got, or at least a lot of people got deployed, so that's good. I guess, does anybody have time? Do we want to chat a little bit about how it went and what we could, I think I have that in my little, do I have that in my little keynote? No, that's not keynote. There's the survey. Yeah, like if we have time, if you're willing to hang around, like it'd be interested to hear if you learned, what, if anything, you might have learned, and what your programming experience is. Let me move that out of the way. And I'm certainly open to ways to improve this in the future. You guys hear that sound? I hear that once in a while. All right. How'd it go? Poor David.
That's awesome. Thank you for stepping up. So Dale, just a reminder, well, if you didn't know, Dale's one of our meetup members. So he's just like one of you. So if anybody would ever be interested in giving a talk sometime, or potentially even like like a lightning talk. So maybe like a condensed topic that you get to talk about maybe for like 5 minutes max. Those could be some good opportunities to kind of stretch your arms and legs a little bit. Getting in, well, you don't necessarily have to get in front of people because of this weirdness, but you do have to talk to people, and it can be a good way to kind of like maybe even help you learn something that's kind of been on your queue for a while, but it's hard to find the time. I know that I've personally used speaking events as ways to force myself to learn things that I wanted to, so it might work for you as well. Dan, do we have something? I don't think we have anything else scheduled right now, though we have a few conversations that are kind of going on with speakers in the background.
Yeah, we have, I'm just starting to line up talk for next month, and I think it's looking like it's going to be like a half-hour sort of talk. So I think we'll probably look to do maybe 2 half-hour ones next month, which will be a good opportunity for somebody to do something shorter. And we're going to start, I mean, I didn't do this week because we had the event, but next week we'll start doing our weekly React chats, or maybe either weekly or every 2 weeks, depending on how everything is going in my household. So watch your calendars for that. I'm obviously I publish them on meetup.com and on Twitter. So yeah, thank you, Dale, so much. I think this was great. John, do you have anything more to add, or Dale?
No, I think it's awesome. Please, so I also know what it's like to ask people for feedback when you really want feedback. If you can spare the like couple minutes that it takes, I would do it right now instead of letting yourself. Instead of trying to convince yourself you're going to do it tomorrow, and we all know that you won't. So it would be super helpful if you do have the time, grab that link. We will have it available and we'll send it out to the people that we thought attended the meetup group, or you can reach out to Dan and I or Dale if you need access to it post the event.
Absolutely.
Yeah, I would add, John, or to the comments earlier about presenting about anything, even if you don't know it really well, is very helpful in helping you learn it better, and to a degree that you might not have otherwise. I know that when I started teaching, I think it was Node. I didn't know Node at all, and I had to learn. I had a few days, and then I had to go teach a Node class and live code in front of 30 students, and it went okay, even though I didn't know what I was doing. So nobody knows. So I would just encourage you to just do it, and it's really worth it. I will also say I'm pretty easy to find if you just Google my name. Contact information's out there. If you want to keep working on this, I'm more than happy to just set up a Zoom call with you and go through it. So if you're learning, you want to learn more, if you have questions, if you want to see how this all thing turns out or whatever, like my time, I'm pretty much retired now. So lots of time available to help people out, and I really like doing it. So feel free. I will post here if you want. Schedule.dalelots.com is how you schedule time with me. It gives you a free half-hour kind of whenever you want, and I'm happy to jump in on a Zoom call and pair program or anything else I can do for you.
That's awesome, Dale. Thank you so much. We also are pretty open to questions. Always, happy to answer questions on the JS room in the Cleveland Tech Slack. So if anybody doesn't have to be about the meetup or anything, but if anybody ever has JavaScript questions, please, feel free to kind of join us there in Cleveland Tech. Again, there's a link in the meetup homepage for Cleveland React for the Cleveland Tech Slack. And otherwise, if nobody else has anything additional, I'd just like to thank everybody for coming tonight. Thank you for your patience with my at least technical internet issues. And hopefully we'll see you all again next time. And hopefully everybody stays safe. And we'll see you again next time. Thank you, everybody.
Thank you, everybody. Thank you very much, Dale.
Yep, you bet. Bye-bye.
Take care.
Thank you. Bye.
Thanks, David.
Bye.
Yeah, bye-bye, Erica. How do I leave?